Yeah, welcome. I'm glad you're with us. Today we have with us Clarisse Beurrier, and she's the co-founder of Animal Alternative Technologies, which is a Cambridge spin-out which does scalable end-to-end cultured meat manufacturing systems. So that's for things like global sustainability and healthcare challenges. Clarisse also organised the world's first cellular agriculture hackathon, and she's worked for the UK's first cultured meat company, which is called Higher Stakes, which is a terrible pun, but I also appreciate it. And so she's a graduate of Imperial Business School and has just completed her MPhil in the Sustainable Reaction Engineering Group in Cambridge, and that was funded by New Harvest. Clarisse, you can share your slides whenever you're ready, and we might have a few more people join, but as we normally do, we'll make the recording available on the CARES intranet.
Okay, great. Can you see my screen?
Yes, can see that.
Okay. So thank you for inviting me and for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. I want to actually start by asking you all a question. What do you think ended the whaling empire 200 years ago? Was it Greenpeace environmentalists because the whales were going extinct? If none of you know.
I'd like to say it was Greenpeace, but I know it was probably something economical, just to be boring. Is that right?
Exactly. Okay. So it was a scientist who actually patented and commercialized kerosene. Wow. And same thing for other sustainability problems, like replacing horse-drawn carriages, as according to a historian, the automobile was invented to solve the problem of horse poop. And that was a huge realization for me, really to use market forces to make the slaughterhouse knife as much of a relic of technologically primitive times as the harpoon for whaling is today. So a little bit about me. I did my biological sciences degree at Imperial, where I was leading the Effective Altruism Society. It's about maximizing the good you can do in your life by focusing on neglected cause areas, such as animal agriculture, with large opportunities for impact. And this is where I found out about alternative proteins and cellular agriculture in particular. Cellular agriculture is about domesticating cells rather than animals. So it's growing animal products using cell cultures. I was really overjoyed to find out that the way to tackle some of the greatest challenges associated with animal agriculture, for example, and reduce suffering, included working on some fascinating science. So I joined Higher Stakes as their early founding member. They were the first cultured meat startup in the UK at the time, and they then went on to make the world's first cultured bacon and pork belly. And from then on, I really owe it to meeting the right people. So Higher Stakes CEO was a huge source of inspiration for me, and she's still a role model. I then met my co-founder, Yash, who at the time was growing brains in the lab at Cambridge. And it really shocked me how much more ahead the academic world seemed to be compared to industry, as living human brains were being grown in labs, but we still didn't have dead meat pieces on our plates. And then I also owe it to meeting the right professor who gave me the chance to pursue some research in cultured meat at Leclerc, and supported by the Cellular Agriculture Research Institute. And then in June 2020, I co-founded Animal Alternative Technologies, and we became part of the Singapore cohort of Big Idea Ventures, which is an alternative protein-focused accelerator. So a little bit about my academic research, which involved comparing different industrial scale cultured meat production strategies to reduce both costs and environmental impacts. So it allowed the identification of critical process parameters and potentially advantageous strategies. For example, it showed that new bioreactor designed specifically for cultured meat were required, and there was none available. And the need to reduce the number of downstream processing steps was really important to reduce both cost and energy consumption, which is the main environmental impact here. And these findings are some of the things that I addressed in founding Animal Alternative Technologies. So I now would like to take you through an introduction to my startup and on the way show you some of the things I learned. Animal Alternative Technologies is an engineering spin-out from Cambridge University, scaling up cultured meat to create a new era for food security and sustainability. So animal farming is responsible for over 25% of Earth's land use, greater greenhouse gas emissions than all of the transportation sector, widespread antibiotic resistance, and 3 out of every 4 new infectious diseases, including pandemics like swine flu. So this is how we started in pitching our problem. But clearly, telling your client that they're kind of responsible for world destruction, we found might not be the best strategy. So we had to reframe the massive problems into a challenge for meat manufacturers. So we now say that animal farming cannot match the growing demand for meat. It's also a very risky business, from infectious diseases to environmental and social risks. And cultured meat is real meat made by growing cells under controlled conditions in a bioreactor rather than slaughtering animals. It can be a safe and sustainable alternative. However, the 2 main problems we address is that there is still no commercial scale production process. And on top of that, there are very high barriers to entry into the industry, into producing your own cultured meat, such as $100 million are needed in 5 years for deep tech R&D, which prevent widespread adoption. And we fear may even lead to oligopolies if only a few cultured meat companies supply the rest of the world in food. So we're creating the Renaissance Farm, a scalable, end-to-end cultured meat manufacturing system that enables anyone to produce their own cultured meats, tailored to local taste and design specifications. It includes all raw materials, the hardware, such as bioreactors, as well as our software and cutting-edge bioprocesses, which are the critical recipes that bring it all together. Our main source of revenues will be royalties from the meat produced by the Renaissance Farms. We found it very hard to communicate actually what bioprocess development here is, as it's quite abstract concept. And we also do not have a real life video of the meat making steps inside the bioreactor. As you can see, it's kind of a lame 3D rendering. Thankfully, we work with the charity GFI, the Good Food Institute, on making such a video to help really anyone to better understand how the meat is produced, how it works, because we want to be transparent, and like the industry we are disrupting. So our Renaissance farms are viable alternatives to the factory farms of large food companies like Tyson, which are our target customers. They also indirectly invested in us through our first funding round through Big Idea Ventures because they're limited partners, along with governments keen to improve food security, such as Singapore and the UAE. So unlike vertically integrated companies and B2Cs, we don't need to spend years and millions on retail, CapEx, and developing each raw material and technology in-house, because we're integrating the best in class. This enables us to focus only on bioprocess development and scale up, which are the critical obstacles to commercializing cultured meat, and thus be the first to market at price parity. In this way, we're going beyond the cultured meat industry and cutting into the $2 trillion global meat market, which is expected to double by 2050. Our Renaissance farms at industrial scale can reduce production costs by 18% and resource requirements and carbon footprint by over 95%. We are the world's first cultured meat company focusing on software and analytics for bioprocess development. We also have novel bioreactor designs for large-scale productions. Our proprietary technologies and world-leading expertise from the University of Cambridge enable us to rapidly develop a variety of delectable low-cost meats, including local variants like Wagyu and Angus. Oops. Yeah, our patented platform includes AI-driven software for efficiencies. We're also pioneers in the application of bioelectronic analytics for food developments. We're adapting these technologies from Professor Owen's lab, which is also at CEP in Cambridge. And world-leading tissue engineer expertise demonstrated here through the creation of 3D vascular tissue. And we have novel bioreactors for cultured meat production specifically, which no one else, because everyone else is adapting from the biopharmaceutical sector. So a little bit of attraction. Yeah, we've grown 1 grants. Technology was showcased the UK Parliament, and we're ranked amongst the top 3 Cambridge startups by Imagine If. And we're also part of Accelerate, the Cambridge Business School program. And we're raising 2.5 million now to build pilot scale prototypes of our Renaissance farms to secure our first customers and also expand our species portfolio, as we're starting with lamb just because it's a wide space. These are some of our business mentors, advisors, just to show you how important it is to have your kind of clients direct your product. So we have, for example, the ex-CFO of Tyson, ex-strategy team Cargill. So all these big mid global giants who are who know they will be disrupted. So that's why they're interested in investing and getting it early. So some of what I learned about the way is I would suggest getting a business person on the team early on, because I personally prefer to work on the scientific side, and I don't want, I spend so much time being immersed in time-consuming admin work. I spend hours on the marketing and slides, which really could be delegated to someone better at it, as you can see. I also found that it's very important in the eyes of the investors. I had to put down Imperial Business School in my bio when an investor even told us to come back when we have an MBA on the team. About that, actually, we spoke to Cambridge Business School. So they have MBAs who are interested to help as part of the degree. So it might be useful to other startups, because obviously the cost of hiring for an executive position like MBA is very high. Also, I found that it's important for the VCs that you choose to really know the market. So it was really helpful for us to go with big idea ventures who were really plugged into the ecosystem to find our suppliers, to find our clients. But also you need to find the VCs that have mission aligned with you, because the goal is either, most of them obviously, is to make money, but here Oz was really to save lives and to address the climate change, etc. So we would not have made the same decisions if we had, we would not have understood each other, and there would be a lot of conflict if it's not clear really from the start. But thankfully, we found that there are so many investors, so you can be picky to find the perfect one for you. Even strategic investors we found were quite advantageous. So we have suppliers, for example, even bioreactor manufacturers who want to buy our Renaissance farms. So it's more strategic partnership in this way. And we found that targeting these medium-sized companies they have the most room to be flexible and to adopt such a new thing. So they generally are our best option as really our clients and suppliers, because they also help us develop our product, and in this way we can know which stage we need to be at before they will purchase it in their own facilities. So we initially went for large players such as Merck as our supplier and global meat giants as clients to our Renaissance farms, but we found that they were very slow, and they are mostly interested in Renaissance farm for different reasons. So the large meat giants, they're just interested when they will be disrupted and they need to be there, but they're not interested for any other reasons as an early mover. So it's important to understand their needs and adapt our messaging. So they want to see, for example, a cost curve and do not care so much about the sustainability topics. And thirdly, we found that most startups aren't ready to supply, or most startups, I mean the B2C ecosystem, really in B2B ecosystem in culture and meats. So there are many, many new startups arising, providing different specific individual raw material for culture meat production. So whether it be the cell lines or the media, etc. But the problem is they're still early on, so they're not ready to supply at scale. Or those startups, obviously, small entrepreneurs, are not ready to invest in Renaissance farm at this stage. They want to wait a little bit until more people adopt it first, and they see the consumer response, etc. Another thing would be focus. I think we're still learning that one. It's a hard lesson, but it's about how to communicate really your company to investors, or our innovations to investors. We used to say that it would depend on the client. If they wanted to make this type of meat with this amount of fat, that's fine. And yes, scientifically, it might be fine, but we've been told that it's about organizational effort, and you cannot afford to waste that as a young startup. So you need to really prioritize quality of one specific application over the modular aspect. Even though it sounds good, that will be for the later stages. Because our modularity here of providing all the different meats at different scale and varying the fat percentage is not core to our differentiation point. Our differentiation point should be the first one to produce a price parity, really bridges the cost down and allow anyone to produce their own culture meats, not having such a modular system. To add to this, we have been called out, maybe making investors wait for our clear 24-month plan that they ask for with goals and milestones. All these materials, I would suggest, should be ready before you start engaging with investors. Otherwise, it'll be very overwhelming, and you might also not seem prepared in their eyes, which is the last thing you want. And this includes preparing risk analysis material, etc. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions, and would also love to hear any feedback, because as you can see, we're really young, or advice that you may have for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clarisse. It was yeah, great to hear what you're up to. It's really exciting. My question is not so much to do with the science, but rather the marketing side of things. Do you find that your audience for this particular product, the cultured meat as opposed to meat alternatives like protein or soy-based meats, are they different audiences, or are you sort of marketing to the same groups of people?
No, it's a really different audience, because it's not supposed to be like a meat healthy, really sustainable alternative for the Gen Z or the younger generation. It's really for the ones that do not want to change. They want the same cuts of meats. They want the tradition of eating and the prestige of eating actual animal products, even if they think it's for their health. But yeah, in the future we can make it healthier, but yeah, it's not a priority now. It's really to address global meat demand. Even though there's so much more alternative proteins, as you know, the global meat demand is actually going to double by 2050.
Yeah,
so it's not enough.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, more not really the people who are already vegetarian or vegan, but
Right.
quite resistant to that maybe. But
exactly.
And I guess as you get to the lower price point, then you'll have more and more of those people picking it up.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I can actually confirm this, because I am myself vegetarian for quite a long time, and it does not appeal to me as a product, to be honest. So yeah, I wouldn't buy. But what I'm interested in here is this environmental aspect of it, because you mentioned that it's actually one of the key kind of like motivators of, or selling points of our kind of, or the money raising point from investors and things like this. So did you try to show how much actually carbon footprint is a result of this sort of analytics, AI, and digitalization, which is required for in your company? Because that's also one of the kind of sources of pollution. If you generate quite a lot of data, store it for a long time in a data centers, 24/7, things like this.
Yeah,
then can be kind of, generating quite a lot of this energy, which produces CO2, which does not really neutralize the effects of farming. Similarly, I would be interested to that how much it is different water-wise, because water consumption is also pollution is quite a big thing in the meat production. So those two questions, if you could answer, would be great.
Yeah, I would love to answer, because actually that's what I did my MPhil, and I did an LCA, a techno-economic analysis of different kosher meat production strategies. So instead of comparing it directly with animal farm meat, which I also did, I looked at how it could vary. So if you had like the worst production process and then the best. And so this is where some of the figures come from, which when I was saying 95% reduction in 99 point something for water consumption, because the water consumption here is the main driver is for the cleaning of the bioreactor. So that's why we found that having just one step instead of having different bioreactors, like in the pharmaceutical industry, would save a lot of water usage. But it's still huge compared to animal farming. But there's so many opportunities to save even more, which is really exciting. So for the energy usage, for example, as well, so energy use there is mostly, yeah, as you were saying, okay, data centers, but also for cleaning. So the steam required, like for our cleaning of bioreactors, because we must make sure everything is very sterile, everything. So there's a lot of energy here, but it's also potential to reduce more. But we did show that overall the greenhouse gas emissions would be reduced. And also it looks promising in the future because obviously the energy is getting greener. So we can benefit from that trend as well.
Okay, thank you. And also one more question, which was kind of going through my mind when I was listening to your talk, is about this process of meat production. If it's kind of based on some sort of cell cloning, as I imagine this, there is a in terms of the natural animal reproduction, there is this kind of evolutionary aspect involved. So the cells modify somehow, kind of that which we eat is different over the years. So kind of, what is the impact of eating clones for
we're not eating
years?
clones. We're not doing any genetic modification. So the cell lines, they're taken already actually from our suppliers. We don't really make our own cell lines, but we test the best from a lot of companies that have already focused specifically on this issue. So we have our cell lines for pork, beef, etc. They're not genetically modified. They're characterized. That means they're completely safe, and we have all the data we need about them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying genetically modified, but if those are cells which are kind of same all the time for every piece of meat you produce, this is kind of like a cloning, because there's no diversity in this. Like there is natural reproduction, there is a mutation going on in those things, or strengthening, being more resistant to certain diseases and things like this. That's kind of constantly going on. But if you have a one and the same kind of cell chain all the time, kind of producing hundreds of those beef steaks or whatever else, it's just, kind of no diversity going on in here. So far as I imagine, my understanding of this process, production process, is very limited, I must admit. But maybe
I think at the stem cell stage, so when they proliferate, then yes, that's the case. But then we make them differentiate into the different types of meat, cells that we want. So we have muscle cells, we have fat cells, and it does it just like it would do. Our bioreactor really mimic the natural body environment of the animal, as it would do into differentiating, like even stimulating electrically for muscle formation. But there's no mutation, because we don't want them to go to a different lineage, and we want to be able really to control.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers all my questions so far. Thank you very much. It's an interesting line of business, and kind of very, I think, futuristic, and I see the potential. But yeah, as I said, I'm vegetarian, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clarisse. Hi. I thought it was a really good presentation. So I guess I have a couple questions as well. The first one is, I think a lot of researchers don't really have this business partner. And you said you accessed one through Judge Business School. So how did you go about doing that?
Actually, it was just normal networking and a bull in Darwin. So we met some MBA, and I also knew another VC firm that is in touch with Cambridge Judge Business School on this particular mission to recruit more business people into the cellular agriculture field. So I knew that the Judge Business School was really encouraging for this collaboration between cell startups and their MBA students, and they have a specific project in the year, like some time that they can take to do what they want, like in the industrial sector. So that's how we managed to get our points of contact in and offer them the opportunity to do some work with us. So it's just like as interns, but it was really useful.
Cool. Yeah, so it was like sort of a mixture of networking and Judge Business School had some program for student projects, I'm guessing. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, in Singapore there's something similar. So SMU is one of the sort of business schools they have. So I don't know for CARES researchers, or for you maybe, if you're planning on doing things in Singapore, it's a good resource to sort of find people probably who want to help start businesses. And I guess the second, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, yeah, I guess the second question is more related to, I guess your value proposition, where you're trying to make the price so low that it actually becomes affordable. And I just wanted to ask, the government, or the UK and many governments, heavily subsidize farming.
Yeah.
Will you be able to get a subsidy to do your culture and meat? Like the government supporting this? And because it seems like that would be a very good way to become cost affordable if the government subsidized you.
Yeah, you're completely right. It's spot on. It's Singapore and some countries that don't produce their own meats and they don't have huge meat lobbies, basically. They're really keen to support and to have like local food production, right? But the ones that have a very established sector, so I'm part of Cellular Agriculture France, for example, and the one I have a very established, like the US, like farming industry, yeah, are actually reluctant. So they give them so much, like they would not even be staying afloat if they didn't give them any subsidies, because it's like they lose money every time. But right. Yeah, because of this, France is like, will never even allow cellular agriculture because they will disrupt this industry.
I see. So you couldn't be registered as a farm, even though you're technically producing meat.
For now, yeah, they're very against it. They're saying that they will not legalize it to be eaten. They're like, yeah, we want to support our own farmers and everything. But that's what we also want to do. We don't want to leave anyone behind in the race to reinvent meat. It's really important that we have a sustainable option that's not, controlled by 2 Silicon Valley companies. We want to offer the Renaissance farms to any food producers at a local level. Hopefully, yeah, helps address this issue that they have.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Clarisse. It's a really nice talk. I have one question on the business side of things again. And then I've got one more question, which is kind of, I guess there isn't really an easy answer. It's more ethical or moral. But the first one is, would you ever consider floating the company on the stock market, make it a publicly funded?
You mean right now at this stage? I think another coach, yeah.
I don't know, at any stage. Okay. Like once you get the funding, because you're looking for the 2.5 million, right?
Okay, but 2.5 million. Yeah, another culture meat company has done very well with this, but the issue is you lose so much of your own share. So we want to retain as much equity as we can, and we have really like the right VCs, looking at us, even strategic investors. So we think there's no need for now, and then we can have a much bigger IPO if we want later on when we have actually our products in the market. But it's an option.
Well, tell me when the IPO is, because I think it's pretty good. I think I'll invest. But then my second question is about vegetarians and vegans, because I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan. What percentage of vegetarians would you say would eat this product?
I think there has been studies about this. So they would even be, because vegetarians are a bit more aware of the problems of animal farming naturally, they would even be willing to pay a premium of like a 20% in some countries. So yeah, that's very helpful. I'm not sure like the percentage of them would be willing to try, but really we're not marketing towards them. So we're really marketing towards the rest. So meat eaters like you, real meat lovers. But yeah, vegetarians, I think they still, they're mostly doing it for ethical reasons. It's not because they suddenly don't like taste. Like I used to love the taste of meat as well. So I'm vegan myself. And it's really for the ethical sustainability reasons, most of them. So I would think that many would still, try and support cultured meat. But I'm not sure exactly on the percentage. I'll have to check for you.
Okay. Yeah, it's because I was watching another talk, a CEB talk. I'm sure that you watched it. I can't remember who the professor was, but she was talking about
Yes,
how
Marianne Ellis.
yeah
I was
that
quite shocked because she was saying that was the main reason to have it was really to help feed the poor in in Africa, and this comes, and I was like, that's kind of the opposite. We're trying to aim for like a high-end product to be able to afford the cost. You could feed them plant protein, which is much cheaper. But yeah, interesting perspective.
yeah, I think that that's what confused me, because I thought that part of this was to aim for the veggies who didn't want to eat something that was once alive, although I guess technically it always was alive, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's
okay.
still alive.
We do still have time for more questions if anyone has thought of anything in the meantime.
Hi, Clarisse. Thanks very much for your talk. It's quite interesting. I think they will be the future technology. Just followed up with the Connor's comments. One thing come to my mind is have been considered to collaborate with some probably religion organizations like the Buddhists. Like this, theoretically, I think they should be fine with the processed meat, because their idea is, as long as the animal is not killed for them, then this will be acceptable. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
we had. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And I guess normally some of the society is quite rich, so you can carry out one of the pilot plan or something like that.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good idea. We haven't reached to the Buddhist, but actually a lot of from UAE, the Islamic more societies would consider it halal, and Christian as well. Like all this big religion, Israel is super supportive of it. So there's funding here for Buddhists because they're already vegetarian and it's not really the market, even though they're really open to even doing hybrid products. So we have a potential customer of a Renaissance farm who wants to make their culture meat, and they already make plant-based meat. So they're the biggest plant-based meat manufacturers in Thailand. So they could even combine them, the two, or just, they're really open to it. And it's nice that they're kind of on the forefront, unlike the other Tysons and meat giants of the world who always want to wait until, they're disrupted, now they need to jump in. These ones want to be pioneers. So it's nice to work with them, but it's not the biggest market. Like we want to really disrupt directly the factory farms, not just the tofu and tempeh.
Yeah, just for the starting the beginning stage, probably to talk with them.
Right, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Jen, you raised a great point. If you also register with the church, then you can get tax benefits too, I'm sure. I think, so I guess I have a question as well about your business model. So are you planning to be the sole manufacturers of this meat? Or are you giving...
We don't want to be B2C, like actually producing the meat like everyone else is doing. We want to be B2B, so providing the complete manufacturing system for any food producers, so we can leverage really their logistics, their distribution channels, their marketing, everything. And we just focus on making the perfect process, the perfect recipe for making the different types of culture meat, so we can move quickly from one type of meat to another as well. And we also don't develop all the raw materials ourselves. We get them from already B2B, so suppliers.
Sure. Oh yeah, sounds quite flexible. Yeah. Cool.
I was just thinking about existing farmers. Do you see that some of them will make the switch to lab or to cultured meat lines and shift away from conventional farming, or I don't know if anyone would really consider that, or are you focusing more on new businesses who want to produce and sell their own cultured meat?
No, definitely the animal farms, actually the
Okay.
big meat producers right now, because we have a lot of complementarity in terms that they're still going to be processing meat. That's what they do, packaging meat. And so it's like another production line that just has a more reliable supply chain and just, yeah, a more safe process. So that's what we want to offer to them. And they know they will be disrupted, so they don't want to be left out. And so they do want to invest early on and start producing their cultured meats, because otherwise, yeah, it will just be a few cultured meat startups. Yeah, not local production, global, really having higher penetration rates is the objective here.
That's great. So they're basically intentionally keeping their existing market of conventional meat eaters, but then tapping into these vegetarian and vegan markets as well. Yeah, that's really
good. But it wouldn't be for vegetarian and vegans that we want to work.
No, you're right.
But yeah, just having the same market, but just a different way to actually produce their meats. That's the aim.
Yeah, thank you. That's an important distinction. I think it's easy to think about people eating cultured meat as vegetarians, but actually, technically, I suppose they're not.
Yeah.
They're still eating meat, but a different, coming at it a different way, I guess. Yeah. Now, any more questions, or you can put them in the chat if you'd rather not ask out loud.
Oh, you can also email me if you have you think of them later.
Yeah, I think if we Google your Clarisse, we get your Cambridge profiles. So yes, if you need to get in touch, you can look her up.
A really long email address. We're changing our name to Renaissance Farm.
Yes, so maybe one more question which I would like to ask is about how does meat look like as an end product? Is it like is it like a piece of meat on kilograms, like a blocks of meat, or is it that you will sell burgers, for instance, or the kind of minced meat and things like this? What is the kind of end product of this?
So yeah, that's a really good question. So for now, the whole cultured meat industry is focused on like more processed, like burgers and patties. So what they do is basically collect a mesh of cells and then process it together. But it's not structured meats, like it's not your usual cuts, lamb chops, etc. So we actually want to do structured meats as a second generation of products. Obviously, minced meats is easier to go for at first, but structured meats, it would work a bit like, I can't disclose too much because it's really tied to the bioreactor design here, but you would just collect it includes the scaffold inside it. So you would just collect the full piece of meat, basically like a body of meat, and then you would cut it into the chops that you want.
Yeah, because I'm asking because actually in Singapore, it is one of the first countries which allowed this kind of lab-grown meat to be served in restaurants, but there's always the choice given to people. They want to eat the lab-grown chicken, or they want to farm chicken. This is kind of at the moment. I see this as people have a choice. Basically, they really will always be aware that what they're getting in a way. But like, I had this conversation with one person before that to me as a vegetarian, I can confirm that this is still a meat. So. And people ask me about this kind of questions, whether I would eat something like Impossible Burger, or would I eat lab-grown meat, those kind of things. So I'm quite familiar with the subject in a way from what people may think about it. So those kind of Impossible Burgers is not a problem for me, but this is still meat. So I kind of lost the taste over the last kind of 8 years. So it's just not the thing, but it is a meat, and I can imagine this that in maybe 50 years when this takes on, there will be no longer kind of people will be asked whether they want to eat the lab-grown meat or not. It will be all in the kind of in this product, which is processed meat. I don't know, the various kinds of canned beef or whatever else, or different kinds of dumplings or. That's what it has. But so at the moment, your target will be for this processed meat industry, and how this kind of will be labeled. For instance, if I want to go to the supermarket and kind of would like to, from the same producer, I would like to choose in between two different things, but one will have a okay lab meat and the other one not. So how do you imagine this process? At least at the start, it will be some kind of, you know, when it's new thing to people, they will be kind of asking this, they want to have this choice, in a way.
Exactly. They want to have the cleaner choice, no antibiotics, some of these claims we can put. I'm not sure on the specific country what term we would get, like a bit like organic or free range for, you know, the animal meats, like a similar term to that. So we also want to use Renaissance meats just so that we can show that it's from our farms, wherever they are, it's still a guaranteed seal of quality and reproducibility. So
if you are going to label those products and give basically people kind of like information about this, that's a Renaissance meat, and they can choose actually this Renaissance meat over the traditional kind of traditionally farmed one.
Exactly.
Even in the processed products from the same kind of company, like producing the same lines of products, there will be this Renaissance,
right? Made in a Renaissance farm, maybe.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that's kind of very hot at the moment. At least in Singapore, it's already available in restaurants. They call it lab-grown meat in here and kind of inform the customers that they can have lab-grown chicken or the traditional.
Okay. Yeah, it's amazing. We're part
Okay.
of the Singapore cohort, so we're thinking of actually moving there. So there's so much opportunities there. But yeah, the chicken that they're selling, it's also a mix of clone-based products, so and to make it a bit cheaper.
Okay. Yeah, but this is one of the first countries, if not the first, which has got this already approved for human consumption. So I think it's a good kind of place for you, even if you want to put something on the market here. Look.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The launchpad to China and all these countries who are actually really keen to adopt them because their demand is skyrocketing and they can't meet it with conventional systems. So
yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for all the great questions, everyone. Really interesting discussion. And Clarisse, I'm really looking forward to seeing how your company goes. And it's absolutely something that I would try, given the chance. And I think I would even fall into the category of people willing to pay a little bit more. I remember with Impossible Burger, when that was introduced in Singapore, you could buy the hamburger with the Impossible meat or just the standard beef. And it was, I think, a couple of dollars more. And I would pay that for, I guess, my reduced carbon emissions. And I know that's ironic considering I still fly, but I think there would be a lot of people like me who are willing to do that.
All thanks to pioneers like you.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested to try it. Jethro, do you have a question?
I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed the talk. This is an ask the audience question, but I'm sitting here listening to this. I've only just eaten breakfast and I'm starving again. Apart from when you described it as growing a great chunk of meat, I was really feeling quite hungry. So I was wondering if anyone else was feeling hungry.
I can confirm. I also feel like
if you're in Cambridge, you're invited to our tasting later on in the summer. We're having our first lamb products.
Right. Okay. Now you're getting a LinkedIn invite. Yeah, I'm definitely hungry. Just a slightly scientific question. You're talking about filling an unmet market demand and scaling up. And of course, one of the things you pointed out early on was the environmental credentials of what you're doing compared to conventional farming. If conventional farming scales back and you scale up to meet new demands of growing the entire market, are we still going to win environmentally?
You mean if animal farming would scale back so that they would just stop, not because they're being disrupted, but they would just decide that they wanted to end?
Well, no, but as you disrupt the market, I mean, I think it's fair to assume you'll displace some animal farming. but we're also talking about meeting unmet demand, and therefore presumably growing the market, the total meat market. And I was rather hoping that we'd done some calculations that show that this process is so much better than conventional farming, that even if we doubled the size, the amount of meat that's being sold, we would win environmentally.
It's a really interesting question. I think I've had to publish the paper, so I should actually look at this. It's good to have this modeling.
Yeah.
But I think that animal farming, even though it cannot really meet the demand, it would try, like it's trying with, because there's money, right? And so it was trying with like multi-story factory farms in China, and it's just giving us more and more problems on all sides. But I think we'll try, but I will try to model it if it doesn't. But I think obviously the plant-based proteins will still be better for the environment, and I think everyone is kind of moving there eventually. It's just that we don't have enough time to wait really for everybody. Like we have some ecological crisis to solve, but eventually.
A practical question. Does the lab-grown product have a better shelf life? Because actually, it's grown in a very controlled environment, so it's starting from a better understood initial condition, if you like.
Exactly, it's a sterile environment, so about the bacterial contamination, that you get from pieces of the animals, etc. But unfortunately, there needs to be so much more research in this area. So New Harvest is the only funding body, but there's been no study really looking at this yet. And I wish we could do it as well, because we have the tools to even compare how it breaks down in our body compared to conventional meats. And so having all these food safety studies would really help with the regulation aspects, etc. So it would be really nice if we had more academic research, because it's hard for us to focus.
Yes, that's what research proposals are for.
Exactly. Hopefully, I just wish there was more. I know that Robert Downey Jr. even funded New Harvest, so he indirectly invested for my MPhil. So it would be great if there were more research bodies, more funding for this. It's coming, hopefully.
Okay, I guess we don't have any more questions. So thank you again, Clarisse, for joining us today and for your really interesting presentation. I think this one has provoked a lot more conversation, just because it's something everyone eats. Not everyone does chemistry, or but we all have to eat, and what we eat is so politicized now, especially with what's at stake. Excuse the pun, the food choices that we make, and how it affects our planet. I really didn't mean to do that. So